And we're back after a brief break. You're watching South Texas Now with attorney Joe Flores. And we're here with Mr. Strawbridge from the port. And we're going to talk about, in the first segment, just to catch you up to speed, we talked about the basics. Now we're going to talk about not only local, but regional and global aspects of how the port impacts people. Welcome back.
Yeah, Joe, when you talk about the impact of the Port of Corpus Christi, it's not only 1 in 3 jobs that are directly or indirectly related to port and port activities. You think about all the refineries, all the processing facilities that are along the Corpus Christi ship channel and all the jobs that they create. But think about it even in a broader sense, the oil that's moving through this port, which is the largest gateway for American energy exports in the country. We have over 60% market share for crude oil exports alone. We're number 2 in liquefied natural gas and number 3 in petroleum products. And so that prolific position has really elevated our prominence, not only from an economic standpoint, but certainly there's a geopolitical component to that as well. And the dots I want to connect there for your viewers is very simply think about what Mr. Putin did when he invaded Ukraine and the subsequent sanctions that were placed on Russian oil and gas, which he was using the revenues from his oil and gas to fund his war in Ukraine. Now that there are American sanctions and Western European sanctions on Russian energy, our allies who have been buying Russian energy need an alternate. And that's where the prominence of Texas energy and certainly American energy continues to grow, which just continues to grow the importance of the Port of Corpus Christi. So I think you've seen a softening of some of the anti-oil and gas rhetoric that we were hearing out of Washington, D.C., because of the importance of us ensuring that our allies have a safe, steady supply of energy while we continue to work on what we call transition initiatives, and that is cleaner, greener fuels that will certainly help decarbonize the atmosphere and reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the green parties from the respective countries and coalitions are really looking at that, and so I'm glad to hear that there are some other alternatives, but they take time. The replacing of fuel, the traditional fuel, with green sort of energy to decrease the emissions is vital. Let me ask you, you brought up global implications. Who do we do business with? I know our viewers want to understand who are our quote-unquote customers.
Well, our largest customer is Mexico. That's our largest trading partner, I should say. But when you think about in Europe, it's Spain, France, Italy, Germany, certainly Holland, where the largest port in Europe is, Rotterdam. They're the largest single recipient in Europe of energy that moves through this port. So we have a relationship with the Port of Rotterdam, as we share in many of our customers. In Asia, it's Japan, it's Korea, it's Singapore, Taiwan. And now we're working with a Vietnamese delegation who really is concerned about what's happening in China and the saber rattling that's going on with President Xi Jinping. Vietnam wants to ensure that it has a steady pipeline, a safe pipeline, metaphorically speaking, of energy, and is really looking to the United States to be that source and that supply of energy. So you think about a country that obviously we were at odds with for a long time. Now we're becoming allies. So it's a really interesting time as we see geopolitical relations shift. Russia and China are coming together. Even Saudi Arabia starting to align themselves more with Russia and China. China and moving away from the United States after decades of being our partner in the region there. This is why energy and the supplying of energy, not only for our own economy, but certainly for our allies' economies, is so important. And if you want to draw that line right back here to the coastal bend, there's no bigger port than the port of Corpus Christi when it comes to supplying that energy to our allies and our partners. That's why it's so important that we don't disrupt that we continue to invest in this region and continue to create those good paying jobs for our citizens right here at home to be able to help our friends overseas.
Well, I'm going to ask you about some hot spots, and not necessarily, I mean, violence, but I mean trade. What about South America going a little bit more south? Latin America, including Brazil, Manaus, and all those ports. Do you all do business with Chile and Brazil and Argentina?
Yeah. So, when you look at just kind of trade volumes before the Ukrainian war, it was about 40% going to Asia Pacific, about 40% going to Western Europe, and 20% going into what we call LATAM, or the Latin American markets. And I spent a lot of time in Latin America. In fact, I lived in Panama as an expat for a while, and I'm very familiar. I've done business in most of the Latin American countries. And so, as I said, most of these countries have an appetite for energy. And so working with companies like Petrobras, which is the Brazilian oil and gas company, or you think about Colombia and their energy companies, they're all looking to ensure that they have that safe, steady supply of energy. Venezuela has been a problem for a while. I think relations are starting to thaw there. But what happened is when there were trade sanctions placed on Venezuelan oil, everybody was looking to Mexico and to the United States to perhaps supplant some of that. So energy has really a front and center role when it comes to trade relations. And what's happened over the last 7 years, prior to 2015, aircraft and aircraft parts were the single largest value commodity exports from the United States, aircraft and aircraft parts. They're now number 4. And the top 3 are liquefied natural gas, crude oil, and petroleum products. So you can see energy has now really started to change the face and the landscape of global trade, and we're starting to balance that burgeoning trade deficit that we had by exporting more of our energy to our allies and our trading partners.
Very good. E seja bem-vindo, meus amigos que falam português também, bem-vindo. Seja bem-vindo y bienvenidos a nuestra comunidad que habla español también.
Él no falta portugués y mi español es malo también, pero muchas gracias.
Sí habla fluente, por favor. But we just want to make sure that, we want to know that, we've got a culturally sensitive leader here that is explaining to us about Latin America, our neighbors, and let's move on to Europe. What is going on as the result of the Russian and the Ukraine conflict?
Yeah, so energy prices have really spiked in Europe. You see it's hurting their consumers because of the shortage and the lack of our ability to backfill that gas that's been that void that's been left by Russian gas being turned off. This is why we've got to do more from building more liquefied natural gas facilities like Corpus Christi's Cheniere's Corpus Christi liquefaction facility. It's the second largest in the country. They've got a phase 3 expansion underway. They're currently permitting a phase 4. So we do see that this is going to be a long-term shift to American gas for Western Europe. That being said, from a manufacturing standpoint, we're seeing Western European manufacturers such as steel producers and others look to the United States and certainly right here in South Texas as possible venues by which they can either grow their business or they can relocate their business. Steel is an essential commodity, and when you think about the large things that are consumed, steel, cement, these are things that are used in our everyday lives when we talk about infrastructure and construction. So I really think that this area is positioned well to be able to take full advantage of that. And we're welcoming these new potential investment opportunities along with our coastal counties, certainly our coastal cities and the state, we're working hard with the legislators to try and get more economic development incentive programs reinstituted. We lost the 313 at the end of last year. We think it needs to come back, and I think in this session we'll certainly see something that will help us from an economic development standpoint.
We've got 2 minutes left, but the floor is yours. Please educate us.
The only thing that I would add is it's important that the port remain a fabric of this community as we have been for 100 years. We've worked very closely to make sure that those relationships are sound. We've seen tremendous success, and I encourage those that we want to share in that success with all aspects of our community. Our success is not throwing shade on another agency. We want everybody to feel the gratitude for the success that we've seen. And so all I would do is we'd love to. We're an open book. If anybody wants to learn more about what's going on at the Port of Corpus Christi, they can go to our website at portofcc.com. We do a lot of community informational events and town halls. There's certainly we go to a lot of schools. So anytime somebody wants to learn more about what we're doing, we're happy to share that with them in the spirit of us being transparent and making sure that they fully understand and comfortable with what we're doing.
Well, you've been listening to Sean Strawbridge, and he is the big kahuna at the port, but very humble about it. And he's culturally sensitive about the global ramifications that are going on. I want everybody to please share this. I have a YouTube channel, South Texas Now, and it'll be airing on our NBC and CBS affiliates, along with KTMB, our Latino station. We're very proud to have brought him on. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Well, that's all we have, and if you have any questions, as he said, let's get it right, and I hate to look at cue cards, but portofcc.com. Portofcc.com. It's up on your lower third, and you can learn more, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I believe his director of communications sent over, and we'll see if we can't play that for you now and in the break proceeding. So we're out of time. Bye-bye to everybody in TV land, and God bless.